So, the next mailbag. Remember, guys, these are questions and comments you guys leave on the channel. So, but before we get going, normal parish notices apply. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and do it. If you want to be notified when this and other content arrive on the channel, that bell icon's the button you need to press. If you haven't supported me on Patreon, consider supporting me on Patreon. It's www.patreon.com/themusictechguy. It's how I intend to fund some of the stuff on this channel. But we are in COVID-19, so remember, stay at home, stay safe, wash the hands, until Boris tells us not to. But now back to the main content of this video. As I said, I'm getting lots of questions about things like the D50, and this one's no different. So this is from Paolo Jenner. He says, I have the same problem happening with my Roland D-70. I meant the D-70. How do I get this memory card? And I also had the same question from Osmel Ramirez. Can you sell me a copy of the card, please? I can pay for the shipping costs. Also, I live in Baltimore, Maryland. So, same video, this D70, restoring the D70 from the factory. So there must be a lot of D70s changing hands at the moment. So this was done back in January 2017. And it sort of kind of confused me a bit, because I bought my D70. I went onto eBay, and there were a plethora of people selling, or I can remember at least several options about buying the D70 factory card. So I did. That's exactly what I did. I went onto eBay and I bought it, and I do remember I had a choice, right? But that was a number of years ago. It was quite a few years ago, actually. I bought the D70. So, and I can't go back in my eBay history. I have actually tried on some other stuff recently to see how far back I can go, and pretty much around about 18 months is the top whack on eBay, and then anything after that they've just erased. And I expect the reason why they do that now is because of definitely in Europe we have a set of rules called GDPR, which is all about protecting personal data, and a lot of organisations have just made the decision that they will keep the data on their platform for a year and then wipe it. And I can't say I blame them, because the fines and stuff is quite punitive. So that's where I got my card from, and I basically have no way of creating these, definitely at the moment, because the D70 is not here. It's in long-term storage. As I've said, I'm living in a shared house at the moment, so most of my equipment is in long-term storage, and the storage facility is shut because of COVID-19. So I can't even go and get the D70. Even if you were to send me cards at the moment, it's a little bit pointless. So I do apologise that. I do have a MIDI file. If you want to ping me on the channel with an email address, I will send you the MIDI file, and you can see if you can upload it to your machine. But people have been having problems with just doing the SysX, and again, because the D70 is not here, I can't run a video through showing you guys how to do this. But if you're going to look at the previous mailbag to this, where I talk about some of the pointers, have a go at those. And when we come out of lockdown, I will go and show you guys how to actually do this from a SysX perspective. Again, I kind of haven't done it because I've got a memory card, and when I got the memory card, and when I did this video, there seemed to be an abundant supply of them on eBay, but a lot of people have obviously bought D70s and bought them, so I apologise for that, but that's kind of where we are. Okay, next one. From Sean Curran, and he says, I agree it would be amazing to have a DMX clone, but doesn't it explain the 49 contact switches and the 2 mod wheels? DMX didn't have those. I'd vote for a keyboard with some kind. This was in response to the latest, I say the latest SMI. It wasn't the latest, it was a couple of weeks back now, which was in April 2020, when I sort of said, what the hell, what is Behringer up to? I tried to say what something is Behringer up to, but I refrain from that because YouTube has new policies on such words in such context. So, at the time of writing and recording the rant, Behringer had released this keyboard outline, if you like, and it wasn't obvious what the keyboard was. They just showed the circuit boards and things like that. And I made the assumption that it was a 49-note keyboard, and I thought it may be a Jupiter. Now, I have seen a picture from a Behringer source that says they are in final production of an OBXA clone. And for those that don't know, the OBXA was a keyboard released by Oberheim circa 1980. And the tag underneath the photograph was this was a pre-release copy for testing. But curiously, the Oberheim OBXA is also a 61-note keyboard as far as I can find. Now, I never had one of these machines. I've never had one of these machines. So I can only go by what I read on various user groups. So that was also a 61-note keyboard. And this looked like a 49-note keyboard, but that could be a red herring. So we still don't know what this keyboard is going to be, but I assume that Behringer are going to release it fairly shortly, along with some of the other ones we're waiting for release, like the RD9. So the next one comes from Daniel Di Maio, and he says there's a cool iPad editor. Can't remember the name. Coffee something or other. LOL. And this is a response to a FB-01 quick overview, synonymous quick overview video I did in December 2015. So that was the first year this channel was operating. And I think that the app that Daniel is referring to is on a site called Coffee Shop, and the link will be in the description down below, which I think is a hosted site, and I think the app is actually by a company called Patchbase, and they've released this app for the iPad and the Mac OS systems. There doesn't seem to be a Windows version of it, but there definitely seems to be one for the Mac and one for the iOS, so iPad or iPhone environment. They also seem to have application support for the TX81Z, TX802, and I did see application support for the D05, which is the Roland Boutique, interestingly enough. So that means that they have been updating the app fairly recently to have that support there. Personally, I haven't loaded this app up, so I can't tell you whether it's any good or not, and that's not because I don't want to load it up, it's just I just purely haven't had time to do it. So maybe that's something for the future, but a good call and well worth shouting out to the community out there. And the last one for this section, it's a mammoth mailbag today. From Dark Ears, and he writes, or she writes, how can I connect the Roland System-1 to a computer? And this was the sort of Roland area TR3, TR8 System-1 connecting the modules together video I did again in December 2015. Basically there was somebody else who responded to that question, so well done. And that was from Contentious. And he said either MIDI or USB cable. Absolutely, to be honest, hit the nail on the head. That's the two mechanisms for connecting it. But I am going to basically expand for others who may need a little bit more explanation about that. So, if you're going to use 5-pin DIN MIDI cables to send information to and from a computer, you'll need a MIDI interface. So any sort of MIDI interface will do, as long as it supports basic 5-pin DIN MIDI and MIDI 1.0 transfer protocols. depending on what you want to use your MIDI interface for, if you want to use it just for recording the System-1, or whether you want to use it for recording a MIDI-based studio, dictates the type of MIDI interface. So from a simple thing like a MIDI Sport up to something more complex like a Mio 10 or other eye connectivity interfaces that are getting quite extensive nowadays. So you either need the interface will either be a USB plug-in, so you plug the USB into the interface, plug the DIN cables into the interface, and that you're away. Or it will be the style of interface like we had years and years ago, which I haven't seen for many years, which was sort of the you plugged it into the sort of card that went in the back of the workstation. Now, admittedly, most interfaces now are USB, but there may be the odd one like that floating about, I suppose. So that's the first one. Now, the System-1 is also fitted with a USB interface, so you can just plug the USB straight into the machine, and the System-1, once you've loaded the drivers onto your machine, will effectively present up two audio channels left and right that you can then basically pipe through to your DAW or whatever thing you're using on your laptop, workstation, etc. And the audio will effectively come across from the System-1 digitally, so you don't do any D to A to conversion and A to D conversion. So when I say D to A, digital to analog, A to D, analog to digital. Okay, so relatively simple. As I said, the important thing about that is you do need to go to the Roland website. You will need to go to support, find the System-1, and download the drivers for your version of the operating system. So whether it's Mac, and there will be various flavors for Mac, because there will be flavors pre 10.13, there will be flavors for 10.13 and 10.14, and there will be a flavor for 10.15 going forward, because Mac OS from 10.15 going forward has dropped support completely for 32-bit drivers. And there are also drivers for Windows 7 and Windows 10. They seem to have skipped Windows 8 in most instances, but you will need to go and get those. So that's sort of kind of a very, very simple rundown of how you connect the System-1. Again, I would have done a video about it, but the System-1 is not here. It's in lockdown. So that's another one on the list of, when we come out of this, of videos to do, because you guys have asked for them.